Letter to Good Spiritists, Isaac, The Spirit of Wisdom Franca, NSP, 2024. Among the various abodes of the Father, it is located on a higher and supreme plane, the celestial city, in which are Jesus, apostles, prophets, angels, Mary and so many other evolved spirits. In the center of the city there is a building surrounded by extensive windows that joined each other, giving the feeling of every floor being a large window to the outside and of infinity. Located on the ground floor of this building, there are several specimens of vegetation that, without any comparison of imagination or understanding in this degree of experience, in full symbiosis between the built work and nature, make the building even more perfect and magnificent. It is in this building that all decisions about spiritism, humanity and the functioning of the various galaxies are centralized, being frequented by all the resident spirits, guests of other orders and deserving brothers. At the top of the building is the meeting room, in which all the spirits gathered for the beginning of the spiritual conclave, a unique moment in the evolutionary line in which Jesus summoned the presence of all the injured, genesiacs and other deserving spirits who achieved elevation after experiences of trials and atonements in several opportunities of reincarnation. The heart of the meeting was to discuss and adjust the directions of spiritual evolution in their various abodes, in all galaxies, under the monitoring and supervision of God. Centralized in the room was an oval table on which Jesus sat to the north and Mary to the south. At the right of Jesus sat 6 apostles, beginning with Peter. On the left of Jesus sat the other 6 apostles, beginning with Judas in the center, on one side, following each other to the right of the Father, the prophets in the center, following each other to the left of the Father, the angels followed each one on one side of the table, half the guests of other orders. At the even number of spirits present, the meeting began. There was also, above the room, a radiant light of luminosity, positivity, emanating intelligence and wisdom to the brethren present. The light was present throughout the meeting and is present in our lives in an omnipotent, omnipresent and omniscient way. Sitting in their places, silence took the room, moment in which Jesus asked that an initiation prayer be performed. The spirits prayed individually and silently, waiting for the completion of each of the prayers of the brothers present. At the end of the last one, Jesus led to the universal prayer of what was perceived, a perfect harmony, and perfect harmony between the brothers who with firmness, transformed the prayer into a music to the ears of those of well-finished prayers. Jesus, the primary mediator, dear Son of the Father, who attributed to the Son, physically and spiritually diverse demonstrations of love to the incarnated and disincarnated, remembered that the objective of the conclave, among so many points, the change of the directions of life, which has been enjoyed by the incarnated and the living of other orders, inadequately, live in the, as if it were unique, without consequences. Watered with a series of vices that impact, not only directly the personal evolutionary lines, but also all the dwellings of the Father, including broad impacts in other galaxies, which are full of evolved brothers, or despite being significantly evolved, already demonstrate recurrent disinterest to come to help those here in need of affection, accompaniment and charity. In view of the desolate scenario of abandonment of the basic spiritual letters of Spiritism, interrupted by an invited brother and representative of another world, Jesus gave the floor to him, who began the exposition saying, "Jesus, we understand the reasons for change and we agree with them, however, we believe that there is currently a supremacy of merits different from what we understand to be correct. If I practice something that deserves prominence in my divine evolution, only I should care about that merit. I am not responsible for the evolution of the other. It seems that I preach the egoism of a certain point to whoever interprets, bashfully, my words and considerations. But you have to be smart. Here I answer for the evolution of the brother. If I practice charity, love of my neighbor, and raise all my thoughts and all my conduct to him for the purpose of helping my neighbor, and he intimately does not receive charity, or does not understand it, or does not receive my love and does not accept what I emanate to him, what guilt do I have? Thus, we believe that today there is an unbridled, incorrect and unfair supremacy from the perspective of the collective. We understand your point of view. However, we observe that the incarnated brothers have practiced charity, and preached the words of God with exclusive views to their own evolution, without caring if the act of benevolence, love, affection, caress, care and respect is being truly employed to the other. If the other is receiving the positive emanations, if the other is understanding the reasons for being and being in that position, if the other is understanding the reasons for his own evolution, it is not enough to see the conduct. There must be a result, Maria added. The brother countered, the result does not belong to me. How can I answer for him? The words were agreed by the other guests. Jesus, smiling, pondered, Virmans. We understand the motives of his statements and agree that individual evolution cannot be exclusively centered on the conduct, understanding of the other, who on certain occasions will be very late in evolution or not. Prepared to receive such love and guidance is certain, though, that the brothers have, as my mother pointed out, selfishly practiced the lessons of spirituality, aiming only at their proof, their atonement, their merit. For these reasons, we understand that the society of the incarnated was lost in family, labor, international neighborhood wars. This has generated estrangement, abandonment, corruption, the creation of walls, houses of faith lost in what they preach and study. Yes, we need, and we will do so, because the suggestion brought to me is approved beforehand, which we will begin to analyze at the moment of closing the eyes in the disincarnation, everything practiced by you, with a view to the other, provoking reflection. Jesus continued speaking, did you give bread or clothing for the other to eat and wear, or because that would boast you? Do you eat the bread you donate? You wear the clothes you donate, or you donate the moldy bread and ragged clothes? Did you give the financial alms to the beggar with an open heart, or did you then judge by the uses you would make of it? Did you participate in politics to realize the common good of that society, or did you do it for financial, political reasons and use what you had in your hands for personal and family benefit? You, elected, have exercised your political prerogatives on behalf of your constituents or all of them. You took care of the root of the tree for that community to have a healthy, eco-friendly and sustainable environment, or you did it to publicize yourself to others by a useless act. If not cultivated, you respect the other for their belief and sexual orientation, or preacher of love of neighbor, judge them for being different from what you believe to be correct. The reflection was concluded with the following question, and many believe that the act of benevolence is by itself sufficient, but what about the other? Received benevolence, love of neighbor is to elevate you to the other, but another. He felt loved. Already at this point of reflection, many apostles looked at each other with fear of the repercussion on the guests. The prophets argued among themselves. While the silent angels were thoughtful, the guests who provoked the debate remained silent and looking objectively at Jesus, who at that time was sitting. Jesus concluded saying, "We want, in this reinterpretation of Spiritism, results, in what is done. We want free will to be practiced with reason, but without losing the emotion." We want the other, deeply in need, to receive, feeling, if graced and not judged, the good done to the other, without looking at the other. It's not good, it's born selfishness. We want a sense of collectivity, yes, and so it will be, because in the reframing of concepts and lessons, we are calling on the good Spiritists. The good spirit is the one who builds the building, thinking whether the building will not fall and whether the building will oblige as many people as possible, and not while the building will equal him financial compensation. The good spirit is one who, looking at himself, sees society. The brother interrupted and insisted, "See? Another not to accept. I mean, here lends itself to my trial, to my atonement. Have the consequent merit if the other does not want help." Let us remember that at the heavenly gate, judgment is by individual practices. A loud murmur began in the room. Was there agreement of those present, in part, with the speech, to what extent the ignorance, involution and unpreparedness of the other can affect the evolution of another? I heard from one of the guests. At that moment the prophets acted and struck their staffs against the ground, the sound of which echoed in all the abodes of the Father. At that moment, so many of the spirits from other spiritual cities that were imprinted and recurring stopped. They looked to the heavens and, imagining the worst, intensified their prayers. Silence hung over the room, and on all spiritual planes the speakers began to do so in thought. Those present looked, some agreeing, some not. Serene and still keeping the smile on his face, Jesus, looking at his mother, who was sitting on the opposite side of the table, got up and went about the room touching the shoulders of each of the apostles, all these in unison in the ideas of their master. During the walk, you emphasized that the other will not impact your evolution, brother. It is you who will impact his. Seek if there is the elevation of good and good, what others are receiving for you, good and good. Jesus kept walking and touching the shoulders of the prophets as he stated, "Go." The atonement and trial will be individual, but to light up the heavens there must be a community look. The contract will always be individual, but every written clause, which brothers, let us not forget, was accepted before reincarnation in the foster homes, will be drafted with a view to the result, to the collective. It will mean that the good Spiritist will dedicate himself to the neighborhood, in the cities, in the states, in the country and, together, for all the planets. Still walking, Jesus circled the table, leaned on his mother's shoulders, and added that the brothers light up to the ignorant heavens, arrive with personal, individual and religious orientations, rooted in materialistic doctrines. They imagine that life is unique. They don't care about life restarting with death. They believe there is a heavenly dichotomy and heaven and hell. Accepting division in this sense, it seems that judgment is a pity, when in reality it is not. It is judged by the consequences of the exercise of free will. There is no penalty for the so-called hell of it. We already understand that the brothers practice their conduct, thinking that they do not go to hell, or if they practice them when they should not think whether they go or not, there is one or another place, and, yes, if the spirit receiving that caress is indeed receiving. All the apostles, enthusiastic about the Master's lessons, leaned on Jesus. Already on the return from the table, now touching the shoulders of the angels, he continued speaking, "I will do what they did before closing their eyes for later." All this leads us to conclude that we must prepare them for the call. It generates an accumulation of spirits close to the entrance, but which remain in the stage phase between the addresses that need to understand the new meaning and remove the very strong pre-existing negation. This needs to reverberate in other doctrines and other spirits. The sense of community must be applied to everyone, regardless of whether they have been baptized and catechized, whether they believe or not. There will be no indoctrination, there will be love. The good Spiritist will need to be reborn with a sense of community. From this, it will generate the salvation of all of that collectivity. From there, you will apply the reflections of this. I mean, therefore, that the good Spiritist will dialogue with everyone. Love and charity have no distinction of sex or belief. Heaven is and always will be for everyone who cares about another. I cannot question that, as a spear hit the right point of the target, made all present, unanimously, accept the proposition that became known as the Evangelist proposition, considering that John, the Spirit of the heavenly gates, who suggested it, was approved the reframing with praise. Mary pondered that the changes should be to the other, in a broad sense, not only spirit, but in all the medium in which he is one of the prophets, the most eminent of them, representing all the ancient spirits who, like him, prophesied the scriptures. At first asked, what was that the lady say with the medium in which the Spirit is? Maria replied, the good Spiritist will not only take care of the phage, also practice good to the other spirit or brother of another religion. The good Spiritist takes care of the environment, animals, studies and perfects technology for social welfare. A good Spiritist takes care of everything and everyone. So Jesus just nods his head in agreement. Calling the word for himself, gave as closed the proposition. After a session of minutes of applause and enthusiasm of all, a new debate was reinstalled. From this, will be a new Spiritism. Master Jesus, sitting, answered, I came to understand it as the new implies in concluding that there is an old, and we do not want there to be this distinction. We are reviewing new guidelines. Spiritism will change, yes, and this is a milestone, but change is a consequence. If we take care of the land on which the tree is growing, it does not mean that a new tree will be born, but a better tree. And that tree will better bear new fruit. The tree is the same, only the treatment was different. When questioned by one of the apostles in the Master, let's create good Spiritists, replied. On the contrary, there are already several good incarnated Spiritists. Let us cultivate them for the propagation of good, true good, communal good, good given new meaning. Where there is light, there will be no shadows. Where they gather in my name, I will be there. The good Spiritists will attract others communicated to the good, where if propagate the good will be good spirits, teaching the new meaning begin in meetings of groups. Groups will attract other people, and so there will be crowds. The crowds will result in the houses of faith, and these will answer for an infinite number of new good spiritualists. There will be reincarnation of good Spiritists, who will have the mission of spreading the good news. The mediums already incarnated will work the writings to reach people who did not even have access to the writer, but will have the opportunity to have the writing. These writings will be released and in the midst of the world, to represent that all nations will compete for good will be born the coder. The coder will not create the new, he will only put together the new doctrine. Houses of faith will need to adapt, reunite, and update. If the guardian spirits in their various abodes will work the changes daily with their guardians, working the change in acting, thinking and speaking. To those who have briefly incarnated and will incarnate, there will be care to understand their individual conduct and practices, but seeking the collective merits to which it was responsible to collaborate directly or indirectly, we must dedicate ourselves to the Spiritists, who, even united in religion and common understandings of the basis of life, reincarnation and spiritual planes, will ignore the message and fight against it. These will be the worst ignorant, because they will preach everything in reverse, that their own convictions, discipline and respect for the other, love for the neighbor, in particular, blinded by outdated lines and, sometimes, in spiritual idols, will attribute the reframing and reframing the most diverse attacks, will ignore the foundations of the own doctrine to attack the doctrine. It will be difficult to work on the change of writing, I admit. It will be difficult to rewrite lines that have been present for years and centuries, in finished and signed books. The roads sometimes lead to the abyss, but at the end of the bridge is the embrace of brotherhood. The road is hard, brothers, but change is fundamental. My brothers, accept the proposition, spread the good news, let it be given a standing ovation by all. The meeting continued for other propositions, but to the good Spiritists, the message is carved in the stones of eternity: let us be good Spiritists. Collaborated for the realization of this letter the Spirit's brothers in Christ: Ezekiel, the Spirit of the Order of Solomon, the Spirit of Counseling, the Manual of the Branches, the Benevolent Spirit, Malachi, the Spirit of the Abodes, Joshua, the Spirit Leader, and so many who did not even present themselves but were present during the writings.